Welcome back, everyone. I've got a very special video today, one of the greatest guest drafts that we'll probably have on the channel, and it's our FPL champion from 23-24, Jonas. Welcome. How are you doing today?
Thank you. I'm doing fine. It's been a long day, but I'm looking forward to doing this video now. How about you?
I'm doing good, actually. Probably not feeling so great after the red arrow that I took, but hey, it is what it is. How is FPL treating you so far this season?
Well, it was better last season, but it's going all right. Obviously on the wild card right now, and I got a green arrow this week to around 1.7 million.
Fantastic. I mean, bit of a slow start, but I think even last season, the tail of the tape really is that things can change very, very quickly. So tell me about when you started the season. Were you always planning to wildcard here on Gameweek 6?
Well, my initial plan was always to wildcard in Gameweek 6, but I was never like 100% on it. But I think due to both my transfers last week, which was Saka and Isak to Vardy and Salah, it makes sense for me now to play it due to a few different fixture swings to plenty of teams, such as Arsenal.
Yeah, that's fair. So you used 2 free transfers last week, very much like myself. I think they were actually the same transfers as well. But what made you want to commit specifically to the wildcard? Because those were basically dead end type transfers, especially I guess Vardy as well.
Well, I was, as I said earlier, pretty set on the Gameweek 6 wildcard from early on, and I'm getting more and more confident with it. Hence my, let's call it dead end transfers last game week. I also started the season with a total of 0 Arsenal defenders, and I'm pretty sure I'll end up with 2 on my wild card. That's not my only reasons, but getting other players in with better fixtures is also a key point to why I'm doing my wild card this game week.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally fair. We took a similar type of punt against Arsenal. Hasn't worked out so well in our favor, but this is still the time to invest into them. So here we are, probably doing exactly that. So you mentioned Arsenal. I guess the first part of Wildcard 6 is, do you have a specific approach towards triple Arsenal that you like? Have you considered some of the other Arsenal players, and how are you visualizing it right now?
Well, as of now, Saka and Gabriel has been in all of my drafts. I've played around a little bit, and both of them has been in both of them. No, all of them. And the last one has been either Rhea or Saliba, and it differentiates from day to day. So I'm not sure yet, but I think I'll end up with the double defenders just because Arsenal is probably the best defense in the league, and they have great fixtures coming up apart from well, maybe not from game week 9, but up until that, they got great fixtures.
That's fair. Makes a lot of sense to me as well. As far as the locks on the wild card, because I just wanted to get out the discussion of picks that you think are very, very simple and always on your wild card out the way. Who's the lock for you right now on the wild card?
Well, Mbumo has been in every single one of my drafts. Same goes for Saka, same goes for Gabriel and Haaland. And other than that, it's always been another Arsenal defender as well, which right now is Saliba. And those are the only... Well, I think Morgan Rogers also has been in all of my drafts, but he's nowhere near locked. But I bought him for 5 mil, and I think it's fair to just have as an enabler either way, who will play, or he has played 90 minutes every game and looks to play in a really advanced role as well.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually, because I feel a couple of weeks ago, we probably thought a little bit more comfortable about some of the other midfielders, like Eze, until he lost penalties and things like that. And that sort of changed the midfield landscape a bit, whereas Rogers has been a beacon of consistency and finally delivered as well. Fortunately, some points for us last game week.
A very nice 10-pointer.
Yeah, I did love the bonus change as well. So a good sort of welcome addition if it benefits my team. Maybe we wouldn't have loved it so much if it didn't. So the next topic, I guess, is just I wanted to actually start from the top, because you did mention that Haaland is a lock for you on the wild card, and I was thinking about what your approach was towards the forwards that would pair up with him. So there's quite a few forwards, but let's just go ahead and reveal the forwards within your wildcard draft here. So it's actually Haaland, João Pedro, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin. I guess the question that a lot of people probably would have right now is, why the backing, I suppose, of someone like João Pedro, given the slightly tougher run of games for Brighton? Like, how do you see him as an asset right now?
Well, he is a fantastic player. I bought him for, well, he's only 5.6 million right now. Got a few tough fixtures, but with the rest of my team, I could easily bench him. And I don't think Spurs and Newcastle are as bad as you'd actually think. And if he's fit, I think I'll just stick with him in the team. If not, I have to see somewhere else. Maybe upgrade to Solanke, for instance.
That makes a lot of sense. I think that's a good point on Brighton's fixtures, like the interpretation that they're actually not so bad from the offensive point of view, because we also have to sort of contextualize that Brighton is a better team than most of the other sort of competing forwards at that price point, like Wood, even DCL. Those are teams or players that play for teams that are much worse on, let's say, offense. Nottingham Forest have gotten some great results recently, but I'd still say that they're a team that's more tilted towards defense versus attack. So I think, yeah, when we talked about João Pedro sort of being someone who was a bit of a game breaker, I still think that that's the case. And the reality is he just hasn't played football the last 2 weeks. So maybe people have sort of forgotten that. And otherwise, I think for people like you and me, people who are also quite invested into analytics, we do think that João Pedro is an extremely strong pick still to go ahead. What do you think about, let's say, Wood getting penalties? Did that sort of change your mind in terms of going for Dominic Calvert-Lewin? Because that was another question that a lot of people had, DCL or Wood.
As of now, I have actually nothing in the bank. So to get Chris Wood, it would require another transfer. But what I like about Dominic Calvert-Lewin is that he has very great fixtures up until about like game week 15 or something. If he can stay fit, that is. And he should be their penalty taker. He has not the greatest underlyings, but not bad either. And yeah, I think I might prefer him to Wood just because of the fixtures long term.
That's fair. I'm also pretty close on the two, but you actually make a good point. I kind of forgot about Dominic Calvert-Lewin being cheaper. And you probably also got him at 5.9, which means, yeah, you've got that cost saving there too. There are some other...
I wish I did get him at 5.9, but I was busy on Saturday and forgot to activate my wild card.
Oh no! So you didn't catch the price rises on the Saturday or the Sunday rather?
Nope, I did not. Not him, not in Boom. I can't think of who else, but there were a few price changes I didn't catch, which was pretty unfortunate, but that's how it is.
That's fair. I remember FPL Robbed on Twitter shared quite a funny post in a very similar situation. So that was pretty unfortunate. But hopefully, actually, you're still catching some price rises and price falls as the week goes on, and you'll come up with another strong wildcard draft just like this.
Well, at least compared to him, I didn't have to eat another Kwanzaa price drop.
That's true, actually. That's been pretty tough as well. 0.4, which just shows you that this season we've had a lot of changes in terms of the price change algorithm. I can't remember at all, even if someone was completely like a dead spot within our teams, them dropping 0.4 million just sounds absurd. So I think something must have changed. But yeah, very tough for us to sort of create a good team unless we're also sort of making sure that we're staying on top of those sort of price changes. In terms of you actually mentioned Solanke as well as one of the other forwards that was of interest to you. Clearly, you've decided to go for some of the budget, well, I wouldn't say enablers, but just budget forwards. What would sort of push you towards someone like Solanke right now? And have you thought about the likes of Jackson or Watkins right now on a wildcard 6?
Watkins, I think, is too pricey for me. I have to downgrade somewhere else, and I just can't see where that would be. And Solanke, I've had in a few of my drafts, but as we go into my midfield, I could talk more about Solanke and where he would be in my draft, like who I would downgrade.
Yeah, perfect. Let's just show the midfielders. So your midfield is actually Palmer, Rogers, Semenyo, Saka, and who's that last pick?
Mbumo.
Mbumo, yeah, exactly. So a complete lock within the team. Probably got him at 7.2, but that's still fine. What do you think about Solanke? So how does he fit in here if you get someone like Solanke into the team and who sort of moves out?
Well, if I were to get Solanke, it would be Palmer. I would downgrade him. Not sure to who. Maybe the underperforming Bruno Fernandes.
Yeah.
And then I'd upgrade Calvert-Lewin to Solanke. Then I have a bit of wiggle room because I think that will leave me with, let's see, zero point 0.8 in the bank, so I could potentially upgrade other spots if I did that. But then again, Bruno has underperformed a lot. I've owned him for every single game this season, started him every single game, and I think I might be running out of patience with him, but I'm not sure.
That's fair. So you mentioned Palmer. Is there any concern with his minutes medium to long term? I know that the substitution in West Ham was a bit of an aberration considering he's pretty much played 90s this season, 82 for another game, but he's also had a knock for now. I guess you're pretty confident in his minutes going forwards, yeah?
I am, and he is not playing in Europe either, which also makes a strong case for going with Palmer. And as we saw last season, he's their penalty taker. He's their main threat. He's the player that creates most of the Chelsea attacks, even though they got a few talented players around him as well, with Jackson, Madueke, Sancho, it looks like right now. Not Nkunku, at least. Yeah.
Good point on Jackson as well. Is there a reason why you're maybe not going for Jackson and going for Palmer instead?
Not really, because I could go Palmer down and then don't get Solanke at all. But I think I prefer Spurs' fixtures compared to Chelsea's, because Chelsea it's Liverpool in game week 8, then Newcastle 9, United 10, Arsenal 11, which is pretty tough. And my plans with Palmer right now is probably owning him just for game week 6 and 7 before moving on. If I end up with him, that is.
That's a good point, actually.
He could easily be, as I said, Bruno Fernandes, maybe even a Jared Bowen. I don't know.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense, because just by owning that Palmer spot, you have the pick that's the easiest to downgrade out of all those sort of non-premium midfielders. So you can definitely go to Son, as you mentioned, on game week 8. You can't even consider Foden whenever his minutes look really good. And we had some news today on Rodri having a potential ACL injury. Potentially that means some of the midfield minutes get to be spread around. Probably more likely Kovacic plays a lot for someone like Rodri, in this case for Man City, but I can imagine maybe someone like Gundo will have to play a deeper holding role, and you never know. That gives you a bit of room to play around with someone like Foden as well, maybe later down the line. So I quite like that idea there with Palmer. Great. So there's other midfielders as well to let's say Bruno. So what about the likes of maybe an Eze or a Luis Diaz or a Bowen? Have you considered those picks as well as your fifth midfielder?
Well, yeah, I talked a tiny bit about Bowen, or I mentioned him at least, I think. Eze is kind of the same situation as with Bruno. He is a bit cheaper, but he's also underperformed quite a bit and just hasn't lived up to the expectations. He has Liverpool in game week 7 as well, where I could probably bench him either way. But yeah, then you said Diaz, who has overperformed quite a lot, and I'm not sure if him being as clinical as he has been in the first few game weeks is sustainable over the course of the season, or let's even say the next 3-4 game weeks. We don't know, but he's overperformed quite a bit.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, he's got 5 goals, plays around 70 minutes a game if you see him as a permanent starter. And so 38 goals being a 70-minute player, for me, is a little bit of an overperformance, to say the least, as you said. So I definitely agree with you there. And ultimately, Liverpool's fixtures are a little bit tougher for the next 3. I can see a lot of people moving back into Liverpool players as soon as game week 10, though.
Yeah.
But I would also say that this is the opportunity to sort of move off of Liverpool, or move off of like triple Liverpool, for example, and maybe you can keep one of them for the sort of long haul. But I'm not so sure if Luis Diaz is an absolute lock. Yes, of course, he's the best performing player in the game potentially right now, but maybe not exactly. We'll say the same thing 4 game weeks down the line. So that's pretty interesting. Any other options that you've thought about within the midfield position that are of interest to you?
Not really as of now, actually. Apart from those we mentioned, let me think. I can't think about any right now, actually. Apart from Palmer, Bowen, and Bruno Fernandes. No.
That's fair. I think there are some budget midfielders that I have thought about, just in the case if I spend a lot of money within the forwards, and they would be effectively like what Harry Winks was for a lot of game week 1 drops, right? Someone who just sit at the bench. Like Tyler Dibbling is there, is the only player that I was thinking about within that I've considered quite a bit within some of my drafts. In the midfield, sorry, go on.
So you're not considering a player like Fabio Carvalho, for instance, even though his minutes might be a bit unstable, but you never know. Are you considering him?
I am, but you know what I thought was quite interesting when I was looking at Carvalho is that some people think that he's a potential penalty taker, but Mbumo's going to play all those minutes, so you know there's no sort of bonus or boost from that. And then I find it quite hard to sort of guess the minutes, because I would have said pretty comfortably that Sade would have started last week versus Spurs, but he didn't. So I'm not sure if I really trust the minutes of any of the Brentford players for now, but something to monitor. I only say this because I think when I've been looking at some of the expected points, for example, between some different models, I saw that, for example, like a model like Hubs didn't have him particularly high, whereas some others had him a lot higher due to that maybe penalty taking element being taken into account. So I just thought it was quite curious.
Interesting.
So you have Semenyo in your team. He's probably the pick that I think is someone that's excited very much within game weeks 1 to 3. Then clearly when the fixtures were tougher in game weeks 4 to 5, people have sort of forgotten about him. But once again, he has like the reverse of the Arsenal fixtures. Still Leicester and Southampton really within the short term, and then actually some really poor fixtures in 8, 9, and 10. Was the idea behind your draft just to make sure that you kind of have rotation with the 3 forwards there to sort of rotate with someone like Semenyo here when the fixtures get a little bit worse for him?
Yeah, I like to have a deep squad with preferably at least 14 playing players. So let's say my reserve goalkeeper is just a dead one, as I have right now. I would prefer players that actually play over minutes risks or whatever it's going to be. So that's why Semenyo, that's not why I've gone for him, because he has 2 nice fixtures. Game week 8, I can bench him. Then I have Villa, which it's a tough fixture, but not as tough as last season, I think. And I think I saw a stat where Semenyo has like the second most shots this season or something like that. I can't remember. I think it was around like 24 shots in the first 5 game weeks or something like that. I might be completely wrong though, but I think he shoots quite a bit.
No, he definitely does. And early on, I've seen that some of the Bournemouth players like Marcus Tavernier and Semenyo have taken a huge sort of leap in terms of their underlying data, which makes sense when you have such a key player of the team leaving. I guess a lot of the attacking share has to move to other players, unless we're saying that Evan Nilsson's going to cover sort of Solanke's production, which I feel like early doors we can probably say he isn't. So makes sense that someone like Semenyo has sort of stuck out so obviously to quite a few of us managers. But that's midfield. Let's just quickly jump into defense. Do you want to just quickly walk us through your defense?
Of course. In defense, I have double Arsenal in Gabriel and Saliba. Then, as of now, have Pedro Porro, Rico Lewis, and Jacob Greaves.
Sweet. Let's just start with City defense, right? You got 2 City defenders here. By the way, I'll let you know, at the time of recording, I think Guardiola could drop, so just make sure that he's out of your team tonight.
No, I don't have Guardiola right now.
Okay, that's good. So Guardiola and... Oh, sorry. Do you not have Guardiola on your team?
Gabriel, Saliba, Lewis, Porro, Greaves.
Oh, right. I'm sorry. I forgot your draft changed. I was just reading off the agenda like an idiot. That's my bad.
Yeah. I'm aware that I changed it pretty late before.
No, that's actually my bad. Okay, so you've got... Oh, because you got Flecken now, don't you?
I got Flecken right now, yeah. But I could also... Well, we could talk about that in the video, because I guess this is going to be edited out.
I know. We'll keep this all in here. Okay, great. So you actually mentioned someone like Rico Lewis. Are you pretty confident in his minutes right now? Did you own Rico Lewis before this game week?
No, I did not. But I think I'm pretty confident in his minutes. Well, Man City do have a few players that can play there, so I'm not 100% sure. But, well, it is Lewis or Walker, isn't it? And then Lewis can step in and play left back as well, couldn't he? I'm not 100% confident, but then again, I have 4 other players that I know will start. So worst case, he's starting and coming on for a 1-pointer or whatever, or I get Pedro Porro off the bench, for instance. So I think it's worth the risk. as of now, because he's a very cheap way into a City defense, and he gets into good positions as well, always playing that inverted fullback role.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I went for Rico Lewis as well early in the season, and I'm still pretty confident in him. So I can see him staying within my wild card. And a point you mentioned too, like on Walker, we've seen technically, I guess, Walker and Lewis play, especially when you mentioned, when Lewis was playing left back versus Brentford, but still inverting. It seems like for the most part that Lewis can play most of the fixtures that aren't when, let's say, City are facing up what is sort of man for man type defense, or an extremely physical type of game like the Arsenal one. So I think that when we're looking at these City fixtures, and they're actually quite nice, that this would be the opportunity for Lewis to once again continue playing almost every single game, hopefully without 45-minute substitutions within the distance. So I think, yeah, the risk makes sense for me. I'm definitely invested in Rico Lewis myself. Any thoughts on your variation? So what has made you go on Flecken today, I suppose, and Gabriel plus Saliba, as opposed to, let's say, Raya plus a different set of defenders?
I just think I like, because when I didn't have Flecken, I did have a Brentford defender either way. I think I had Pinnock at the time. I can't remember, but I think it was Pinnock. And I just think Flecken is a better asset, as he's going to get the saves. And yeah, I don't know. I think I actually don't have a real good reason when I'm thinking about it.
I think that makes sense though, right? Because it's there isn't too much really between like a Ryan and a Flecken and a Saliba plus a Collins. I just think it just comes down to how you want to construct your squad, really, because Saliba in the future could be a transfer out, I guess. Whereas with Raya, you're holding him for the long term.
Yeah, and Saliba, I could also actually transfer to a more expensive player, as with Raya, I would have had another million locked in my goalkeepers.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
My reason, but I'm nowhere near locked on it. I might just end up going Raya as well. We're recording on Monday, so we'll see come Saturday morning.
That's true. I myself have Ryan now because I've just picked up the price rise, but I could very well see myself going Saliba too. And another interesting thing is that I don't have Porro like you have in your team. So when I look at Saliba as a potential option within some of my drafts, I tend to think that maybe, as you said, when the Arsenal fixtures get a little bit tougher, then I plan to transfer someone like Saliba out, and Porro could be that sort of person. Is there anyone that you'd be transferring Saliba out for in the future?
I actually haven't looked at that just yet. If I'm being totally honest, I could move him to around game week 10. I could move him to a Liverpool defender, like for instance Robertson, who seems to be starting every game, getting into decent positions, and also taking a few corners. So that could be an easy swap because they're both 6 million.
Yeah, 100%. I'm actually also kind of considering even maybe going with a Liverpool defender still on the wild card. Another theme, I suppose, here is that, yeah, there's no Liverpool on the draft. You're a Liverpool fan. Any particular reason why no Liverpool, or is it just fixture related?
It's fixture related. I am going over to Liverpool and watching both the Chelsea and the Arsenal game. So it would have been fun to own the Liverpool player, but I got to put the feelings aside and just enjoy the games without thinking about FPL.
100%. I guess another point that sort of came from the weekend was people thinking that, you have to play like good FPL assets, right? Like Gabriel Saka doing well in some of the tougher games. What is your view in trying to create rotation around some of the tougher games? So you mentioned obviously trying to maybe have, let's say, Brentford players or anyone who actually kind of covers tougher fixtures within the distance. I assume you're pretty comfortable actually benching good quality players on a tough game week. Has that changed at all?
No, not really. It depends what player we're talking about.
Yeah, true.
Last season, I remember starting both Gabriel and Saka against Liverpool, and I think Gabriel scored. I'm not sure if Saka did.
He did.
Yeah, but no, it depends on which player. Is it Haaland? I'll start him whatever game. Is it Salah? I will start him no matter who they face, and probably the same goes for Saka as well. So But if we're talking about the Pedro Porro, for instance, I think that's a different story. I benched him in both the game against Newcastle and the game against Arsenal, just because I thought I had a better player in Robinson who could start over him, who's obviously not on my wildcard anymore, or he never was, but he's not in my team anymore.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Pretty much firmly with you. Although thinking about how we both used 2 free transfers to get to Salah and it didn't work out has me feeling a little bit bummed, considering how well Haaland did yesterday. I guess thinking ahead for Spurs, is Porro someone who's close to locked for you in the wild card, or can he change as well? Is he another defender who's maybe in the mix with some others?
He's nowhere near locked, I think. He's just in my team right now. Because I have 0.1 gain on him, and if I would want him back come Saturday, I mean, I think it would be a bit annoying to buy him back for 0.1 more than I actually bought him for at the start of the season. So that's the reason he's in my team right now, because I don't want to eat or lose the 0.1 if I end up going with him on my wild card. But he could potentially be someone else. I could, for instance, do Porro to, let's say a 4.5 and get Ederson, for instance, over Flecken. That is a possibility, and doubling up on both City and Arsenal defenders.
I quite like it, actually, because I think even the wildcard draft that I shared a few days ago had exactly that, double City, double Arsenal, because it feels still a little bit hard to guess the minutes right for the Man City players. And I do think that we've reached a point where someone like Phil Foden isn't playing effectively what is 90 minutes of football every week because of the sort of depth that they have and with the sort of change in style. So yeah, I think that actually makes a lot of sense, wanting to maybe invest into someone like Ederson. And as you said at the start with Rico Lewis, you're going to have to deal with some of the uncertainty and the risk involved with going for a City defender. Going for Ederson takes that away, which is nice.
And I also I know that Rico Lewis benching will happen eventually. I'm prepared for that, and that's why I have 5 defenders that actually can play, even though it's not optimal to play Jacob Greaves every week if Lewis all of a sudden loses his spot.
Absolutely. So I mean, Jacob Greaves is the last pick within your team. What are your thoughts on that 4.0 position? Is he the one for you, or anyone else?
Well, he's been in every single one of my drafts as the 4.0 defender. I would have thought about going Mosquera from Wolves as well, just because he's also 4.0, but he is injured now, isn't he? I can't remember exactly what. And I've also considered Sepp Vandenberg, but I'm not sure if he will play in the when they're not playing the toughest fixtures and playing a 4-back formation. I'm not sure if he's going to play, and that's what puts me off him, because I wouldn't want him just for the tough games against Arsenal or whatever.
Yeah, no, I completely get you there, and I think I share the same concerns, which is why I also featured Greaves on one of my wildcard drafts, and unfortunately we just don't have that sort of information yet, because we know that Collins and Pinnock are still definitely very well rated by Brentford fans and anyone who's been watching their games, so that's pretty interesting. If you were to go for a Brentford defender, though, like at 4.5, who would be the one you go for? Would it be Pinnock or Collins for now?
I think it's a coin flip, really. Maybe Pinnock, but I've seen that someone has been saying that Collins is the one because of Pinnock having a few mistakes and Collins being quite good so far, but I think they're both nailed, so I don't think it's that important.
Yeah, the funny thing I think with Collins too is that he has 2 FPL assists, but no real assists in real life. So I think some people are firmly on the Collins camp, but you never know. And I think those 2 players are still nailed. So I agree, it's a bit of a coin flip, but I'll probably, if I go there, I'll probably pick the one who's least owned and hope that works out from a risk perspective.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So in terms of just rounding out the team here, what are you looking forward to over the course of this week? Any sort of information that you'd like to have with some of the midweek games, or is it just sort of, once again, finding the little pairs of rotation that you like and the right draft around? Is it that Palmer position, I guess, even, who could be moved around, as you said, whereas it seems like you were quite set on some of the other players?
Yeah, I'm pretty set a lot of the other players, and I'm also pretty set on the structure But then again, it could be Palmer downgraded, and I could upgrade 1, 2, or maybe even 3 positions. Depends who I'm taking in for him. But I am pretty set. But this, for information this week, on the top of my wish list is Rico Lewis is starting leak. That's on the top of my wish list.
That's a good point, actually. So I was speaking to FPL Focal about it, and I think he's done some sort of investigation work in terms of how often City plays over the next few game weeks, and they play, as you say, or intonate really, that City play first versus Newcastle in game week 6, and then actually for the next few game weeks you actually have City playing at least on the first or second day for most of the future game weeks up until something like game week 12, really. So it works out really well if you get potential leaks for Man City, and I think another thing too is that Rico's played well enough where maybe that concern isn't as large as it would be when you're sort of dealing with those types of risks. And of course, I'm sure you'll have a strong sort of bench so far.
Of course. And hopefully it's not getting subbed at halftime this time.
Yeah, that wasn't so nice when I owned that. Any sort of shout outs you want to give as your closing thoughts?
Nah, not really.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much, Jonas, for coming on the channel. Really appreciate you sharing your time here, and I wish you the best of luck with your wild card, and I hope it's quite similar to mine so that we can both get those green arrows together.
Hopefully.
All right,
Good luck.